Hello, welcome to Solving Watercolour. Do you struggle with painting convincing skies? Let's fix that. Today I'm going to be painting from this photo that I took last year while walking on Exmoor. It's a view looking from Exmoor to Porlock Weir, and I love the way the sky and clouds look in this photo, so I thought today would be a good opportunity to talk a bit about skies and why they can be so difficult to get right. Let's start by using a hake brush to wet the paper. Sometimes I use a flat brush for this if I want to get a very even coverage of water. The hake brush with its soft natural hair is ideal when I want to leave lots of random dry spots, and this is great for a cloudy sky which tends to be a mixture of hard and soft edges. Remember, wet paper equals soft edges, dry paper equals hard edges. I always used to struggle a lot with painting skies, which should be fun and easy to do. After all, it's just a collection of random shapes, but I couldn't seem to get a good result with any consistency, and it was really frustrating me. I tried all sorts of approaches, such as lifting out cloud shapes with cotton wool and bits of tissue, and that can work well, but I was never really happy with the results. The first thing that really helped was lowering the angle of my easel. I would always paint with the paper on my easel at about 45 degrees, and for skies that's just too much. When you lower the angle of the paper to about 15 or 20 degrees, this slows the movement of your paint right down and gives you much more control. But if I could sum up in one sentence what made the big difference, skies became easier to paint when I reversed my thinking. Instead of trying to paint clouds, I focused on painting the spaces between the clouds. I'm just going to warm that blue slightly with a touch of dioxazine purple for the sea. Now back to the sky again, just dropping in spots of cerulean blue and letting them blend out without doing a whole lot of brushing. Let's put in some of the darker shadows on the clouds now. I like to mix a grey purple from ultramarine, permanent alizarin crimson and Payne's grey. The paper is still wet, but there's some drier spots here, and that's creating a few hard edges on my shadows. And that's fine, a few hard edges can help define the shapes. If you want to know more about how I use hard and soft edges in my paintings, go back and have a look at my last video. don't be afraid to pick up your paper and change the angle to get your paint moving in the right direction if you need to. I want these shadows to move sideways, not downwards, so I'm going to tilt my paper up and encourage the colour to flow in that direction. I'm noticing that the paper is really starting to get dry now, so I'm just going to add a touch of colour to finish and bring that sea right up to the land. And I'm going to call that done and quickly move on to the land. If you're finding this tutorial helpful, why not like this video and subscribe to the channel. My website, solvingwatercolor.com, is linked in the description below, and I have a ton of free tutorials there. A free course, Learn How to Paint Watercolour in 7 days, and if you want to go more in depth and learn a whole lot more about this beautiful art form, I have some paid courses too. I'm going to start painting the midground with this green that I've just mixed. And I've just realised that I've gone a bit too dark with it, so I'm going to get some water on my brush and thin that out. I don't use pre-mixed greens very often. As you can see here, I like to mix them on the fly as I'm working, usually from a mixture of New Gamboge and Ultramarine. And if I want a lighter green, I can use Cerulean Blue, or if I want darker greens, I can mix in some Prussian Blue or Payne's Grey. The human eye is really well adapted to seeing a range of greens, and I think that adjusting your greens on the fly creates a more natural, organic feel with subtle tonal colour changes rather than just laying down one big block of colour. My plan is to put my lightest, coolest greens in the midground and save the darkest and warmest greens for the foreground to try and get a sense of depth by adding some atmospheric perspective. Atmospheric perspective in a landscape just means that things tend to get lighter and bluer the further away they are, so that's why I need to keep my greens fairly light here, because it's easy to darken colours in watercolour but very difficult to lighten them once they're dry. I'm using the texture of the paper to help break up the solid block of colour and create some highlights. I'm just going to add a little quinacridone gold to the mix to lighten my green and create this sunny warm patch here. While the paper is still wet, I can start subtly blending some dark greens and really start to separate the foreground from the midground. Okay, time to let this completely dry before I go on to the final stages. Now that everything is completely dry, I've finished all the wet into wet painting, and I'm going to finish the rest of the painting wet on dry. And that means just the hard edge shapes to bring everything into focus. I'm going to start by putting in the cliffs in the distance. I'm using the same ultramarine, Payne's Grey, alizarin crimson mix that I used in the clouds, but keeping it more on the cooler blue side. It's that bluing effect of atmospheric perspective that I talked about earlier. Now I'm getting down to the fine details of the landscape. That's the midground done, and now I'm going to start working on the foreground, adding more details and putting in my darkest tones. just about finished with this one now. I'm just going to add in some very thin washes of blue to create the effect of shadows on the water. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you soon.